all animals, now that we have our anatomy down, they go through reproductive cycles, and there's a very important reason. One, you want to conserve resources. You don't want to be reproducing and giving birth to an animal if there's no food around, so it's usually seasonal. Both male and females have reproductive cycles. If you noticed in the tubules, it takes 3 weeks for your sperm to mature. The male cycle is different than the female cycle, but there is a hormonal cycle. And they are reproductive cycles are generally controlled by trophic and sex hormones. Here is the male reproductive cycle. So we have our hypothalamus, we have gonadotrophin releasing hormones, so this is to the gonads. The anterior pituitary, so that's the front or towards your face, and the anterior pituitary will release or stimulate the release of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Well, the Leydig cells, which help produce the androgen in the actual testes, will make the testosterone. The Sertoli cells will cause spermatogenesis, or the creating of more sperm, but they also release inhibin, which tells the anterior pituitary we don't need any more FSH. Testosterone tells the anterior pituitary I don't need any more LH, and testosterone, high levels of testosterone, also tell the hypothalamus I don't need any more gonadotropin releasing hormone. So it is inhibin and testosterone that'll stop it, to slow it down based on how much testosterone and how much inhibin, and both of those are based on how many Leydig cells and Sertoli cells which are activated. Now, the female one. Oh, this is like the best picture ever. It goes through what's happening first in your brain. Then it shows you your hormone levels. So what are the pituitary gonadotrophin levels in your blood? And this axis is time. This tells you what's happening in your ovary over time. This is your blood hormones from your ovary. What's your ovary doing throughout the cycle? And then this is your endometrium lining. Thick, bloody endometrium lining. You're shedding it during menstrual phase, so it's breaking down, and this is the period from 0 to 4 or 5 days. Now you have a very thin endometrial lining, and then throughout the month it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds, it builds. Maybe implantation occurs here. It builds, no implantation, we're going to shed it again back over here. So excellent. During your period, what's happening in your ovary? Well, a follicle is starting to grow, it's maturing, and at about day 14, remember you start counting from, not the end of your period, you start counting from the beginning is your day, beginning is your day 1. So by day 14, you have released an egg. Now that egg is going to be traveling down the fallopian tube. So after release of the egg to about here is when you are going to, this egg is going to be traveling down the fallopian tube. So this is like the window of fertilization. However, do not use the rhythm method to prevent pregnancy, because so many things can affect these hormone levels. Once women are older, you're in your 20s, it gets very stable, but right now you're younger, it's all over the place. You can see what your ovaries are doing. They're releasing progesterone. This peak in progesterone causes a luteinizing hormone shift. So this luteinizing hormone will peak, and that luteinizing hormone causes the production of the corpus luteum. Well, the corpus luteum has to fix this big hole in the ovary, and it's like a plug of fat. It's a fat plug that blocks up that hole in the ovary because it's released its egg that's now traveling in the fallopian tube, and the corpus luteum blocks that up. This one is slowly degenerating, so by the next time your menstrual cycle starts again, you've got another one growing up here. I love this picture. It shows everything in one page. It's amazing. Take some time to look at it. It's wonderful. Now, so the egg is discharged through this hole. The corpus luteum is going to have to fill the hole. Fertilization is to occur somewhere in the oviduct. Usually they say the bottom third is kind of the best, because if it fertilizes and gets to the uterus too quickly, it hasn't developed enough to be able to implant, and you'll just shed it. If it fertilizes too early, it will get too large and it'll get caught in your fallopian tube, and that's called an ectopic pregnancy. They're usually not the obvious 99% of the time. Your baby's not going to be to term, and if this ruptures, it can really damage, if not kill, the female. Now, looking at the proliferation phase of the endometrial lining, if everything goes well, cleavage continues, you're at a morula, you're about day 8, now you're a blastocyst. The blastocyst has the ability to implant, hide from your immune system, because the blastocyst cells, these inner cell mass cells of this blastocyst, have different MHC markers than you do. So this is still a mystery. How does it bore through and hide from your immune system in this endometrial layer? So there you go. Now you're pregnant. Well, what happens to your organs? I want you to notice the difference between a pregnant woman and a non-pregnant woman. Nice big lungs. Little squished up lungs. Nice hanging stomach. You can eat. Little squished stomach. You can't eat much. Oop. Look at all the room for the intestines normally. Not much room for the intestines here. Not much room at all. Ooh, even better. Look at a bladder. Can hold some nice urine. Look how big your bladder is. You can see why pregnant women have to pee a lot. Now, what this one picture does not show is the pressure from these organs up actually turns your heart on its side. So your heart and that aorta and those pulmonary vessels in females is actually, you can physically bend it to the side without stretching anything, and that's an important thing to be able to make room for a baby. So we're going to stop here. Part 2, we'll go through pregnancy and end with all the ways to prevent it.